Now, sub-postmasters who were wrongly convicted in the Post Office Horizon IT scandal are said to have their convictions automatically quashed as new legislation is introduced in Parliament later today.
Yes, this comes alongside the widening of a compensation scheme to those who were never found guilty but still lost money as a result of the system. We can speak now to former sub-postmaster Tim Brentnall. Morning, Tim. Thanks very much for talking to us this morning. So, what is this day going to mean for those of you who have been affected by this?
Well, it's very welcome news that people who haven't yet managed to have their convictions overturned will have them quashed. But for us on the ground, today's news, apart from that, it doesn't really change anything.
Because your own conviction was already quashed, wasn't it? But you're still waiting for the compensation which you say you were owed.
Yes, that's right, John. My conviction was one of those quashed back in 2021, and as yet we haven't had any meaningful kind of recompense.
So are you hearing anything about whether that changes today? Yes, you get a new law starts going through Parliament, but will your compensation thing be speeded up?
No, there's nothing that speeds up any kind of compensation for us.
At this point, I mean, we've spoken before, haven't we, Tim? But at this point, how frustrated are you about the progress or lack of progress?
Yeah, it is very frustrating, Sally, because my conviction, along with up to 100 other people's, was quashed over 3 years ago. And we've spent the last 3 years trying to build our cases to claim our recompense from the post office. It's welcome that the remaining convictions are quashed and that there's payments made available to people in the other schemes, like the historical shortfall scheme. But for people in any groups, whether it's quashed convictions or people left from the GLO group, payments need to be sped up because a lot of people are a lot older than me and haven't got the time to wait for these payments to come through.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, you're living and breathing this every single day, and you know only too well all the different groups and the different arrangements and offers and all that kind of thing. But for those of us on the outside, it's really complicated how all this fits together. But just taking it down to basics, you have been offered, I think, a fast-track £600,000 settlement. Is that right? But you're saying
that's right.
Put that on hold because you think, given your young age and what happened to you, you think that you should be getting more.
Yes, people in my position could take that £600,000, but for the majority of us, that doesn't come close to covering what it's cost us. People have died. People spent months in prison. We've had a decade of having a criminal conviction and not being able to find proper employment. So you know that figure would be welcome for some people, but for most of us, it doesn't come close to what we need to claim.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there'll be people getting ready for work this morning who think, yeah, £600,000, that sounds like an awful lot of money, and why don't you just take it? Well, what would you say to them?
Well, yeah, it does sound like an awful lot of money, even to me or anyone else. But when you add up what the post office cost us, it killed my thriving business and cost me the last 10 years of employment and probably 40 years of business ahead of me. Our claims haven't been picked out of thin air. They've been put together by forensic accountants, and they need to pay what we're owed.
And Tim, how apprehensive are you that heading into a general election this year, things will not be solved for you before that?
Yeah, any kind of distraction can take away from it. It took the drama to get the public support behind us, and that's really what pushed the politicians forwards to actually do something. They could have done something about this at any point in the last decade, but have had to wait until there's that pressure on them. Soon as other things like general elections start happening, that pressure might dissipate.
Tim, we're going to speak to the Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollingray, here on Breakfast in a few minutes' time. Is there anything you'd like us to ask on your behalf?
He needs to be pressed to speed up the processes of people who have claims larger than the amounts that they're offering. Because if people sign up to the 600,000 or in the other group the 75,000, those payments can be made almost within a week. Why are people with larger claims being forced to wait years?
Switch on the telly. Tim, watch BBC One, and we'll put that very question to the Minister in the next few minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, John and Sally.
Thank you, Tim. As part of new legislation announced today, hundreds of innocent sub-postmasters prosecuted by the Post Office or the Crown Prosecution Service will have their convictions quashed. The bill will cover offences carried out in connection with the Post Office business between 1996 and 2018. The blanket exoneration will cover offences of theft, fraud, false accounting, clearing the names of many people who've had their lives ruined by a wrong conviction. As well as sub-postmasters and their relatives, the new legislation will also cover other employees of the Post Office who have been wrongly convicted. John.
Well, we're joined now by the Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollingray. Good morning to you, Minister. Thank you for joining us here on Breakfast. We just actually heard from Tim Brentnall, a former sub-postmaster here, talking about his own experiences. And he welcomes this change today, and the new law is finally going into Parliament. But he's worried that an election might get in the way or that parliamentary processes might delay it. When do you think this law that quashes those convictions will come into effect?
In July. And as soon as that has happened, it means we can get compensation to those people where we've overturned those convictions. So we think the legislation will affect around probably just short of 700 people. We'll have done it by the summer recess. That's our plan. Clearly, Parliament works in mysterious ways, so we do need the support of both the House of Lords, House of Commons and the House of Lords to be able to do that. But we're confident we have got that support, and we're confident we can pass this legislation, put it into effect in July and start paying people as soon as possible after that. We should be in August.
That as soon as possible phrase that will get ears pricking up this morning, because of one thing that Tim told us, that, you know, yes, he appreciates that this will get money to people sooner, and he's grateful for that. But he says people like himself who feel that they're owed the bigger sums in compensation, they are still facing enormous delays. And what he wanted to know is, can you speed up the money that people like him feel they're owed?
Yes, we can, and we've been working on that for some time. One thing we did last autumn is we introduced a route for people whose convictions have been overturned to give them, instead of going through with a very complex and rather long-winded compensation scheme of assessing each individual claim, people could take a fixed sum award of £600,000. Now, I know Tim's claim is bigger than that. I saw Tim giving evidence at a select committee recently. For people who have to go through that route, it is more complex, it is slower, but we are speeding up that compensation route as well by putting some other measures in place as recommended by some of the solicitors involved in the process. So we are accelerating compensation. We're also announcing today people in the original compensation scheme called the Horizon Shortfall Scheme, and about 2,700 people have gone through that scheme so far, will get access to a fixed sum award in that compensation scheme. So if people with claims below £75,000, if you took a few tens of thousands of pounds, for example, in compensation on that scheme, you'll get an uplift to that compensation to £75,000 automatically, and also take that route for more rapid compensation if you're newly into the scheme. So we announced a number of measures to accelerate compensation, as well as the announcement to overturn the convictions in this way.
OK, accelerated. I guess people like Tim will be pleased to hear that, but they might doubt whether it will actually happen, because, you know, they are still massively frustrated that this is a scandal that started, in 1999, and here so many of them still waiting for money and for their names to be cleared. I mean, you could surely have dealt with this more quickly.
Yes, we could. And we, you know, of course, in a complex process like this, if we knew what we knew today, we'd have done it differently. But that's the reality of these schemes. I've been involved in compensation schemes in other areas as a backbencher in terms of some of the banking scandals. It's always complex. It's always too slow. But we are acting much more quickly. We're bringing in new measures, as I said today, to accelerate that. That is working. For people in the group litigation order scheme, there are 3 different schemes, which doesn't help. That, again, is another complexity to this, but we are rapidly accelerating the compensation in that scheme. Now 128 people have applied to that scheme. We've got 110 of those offers now agreed, and those people have been paid much more rapidly, and that literally the number of claims that's been assessed and been agreed in that particular scheme has the pace of that has doubled in the last month. So we really are doing things much more quickly on the back of the learning and the new measures we've put in place.
OK, can I also ask you about this racism row facing the Conservative Party again this morning? Your top donor, Frank Hester, is alleged to have made comments in 2019 about the then Labour MP, Diane Abbott. Do you think what he said was racist?
Yes, I do. I mean, you don't judge somebody's character by their skin colour. It's totally wrong what he said.
So why did it take 24 hours nearly for the Prime Minister to say it was racist?
Well, I don't know the Prime Minister's movements yesterday. What I saw from Number 10 was a clear statement that they felt it was racist. You know, we're not a racist party. I've never met Miss Hester. I don't think he's a racist person. I think he said something was stupid, completely inappropriate. We all say stupid things at times. I don't think people generally say something as stupid as that. But he's apologised. I think we should try and move on from that. And I would reiterate to people that the government has the most diverse cabinet in history. We've got the first British Asian Prime Minister in history. We're a proud record in terms of diversity and equality. That's what we stand for. That's what people should have the confidence in, is that that's the case.
I guess, given his own heritage, that made people even more surprised that Mr Sunak wasn't quicker to condemn this as racism. Were you, as ministers, as a government team, being told yesterday, before the Prime Minister said it was racist, not to say it was racist or to deny it was racist?
No.
Because we've got a clip that I just want to play, which goes back to a couple of your colleagues yesterday, where it's almost like they were bending over backwards not to use the R word. Just have a listen.
Mr Hester has made clear that he was rude, that he insists that his criticism had nothing to do with the colour of Diane Abbott's skin, and he has rightly apologised. But this is a story which hasn't yet been verified.
Well, it's clear that what he said was inappropriate. He has, as I understand it, apologised for those remarks. I think the critical point here is I don't think what he was saying was a gender-based or a race-based comment, but it was clearly inappropriate. He has apologised, and I think we need to move on from that.
Graham Stewart and Mel Stride there, your colleagues, saying it wasn't racist. Now Rishi Sunak says it is, and you say it is. It does seem like something fundamentally changed as the Prime Minister was put under growing pressure yesterday.
Well, both of my ministerial colleagues there, who have a great deal of time for and confidence in, have both said that Mr Hester had apologised. What was he apologising for? Then that comment was completely inappropriate.
But you can see that people watching yesterday and now today and hearing the change in language, change in tone, might think that the Prime Minister didn't have a grip on this. And I know he's got lots of stuff on his plate, but this was the big story yesterday. It's the big story again today. And it seems like there wasn't a great deal of directional consistency coming from Number 10.
Well, you can assess what he said in lots of different ways, but I think in terms of how I read it, how I see it, he was talking about Diane Abbott's skin colour and using that as a way to judge her character. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do, and he's apologised for it. The Prime Minister's been clear it was a wrong thing to say, and it's right that he apologises. You know, I don't believe Mr Hester is a racist person. I've never met him. I can't really make that judgment. But we should always try and judge people's character in the most fairly, based on what they say and what he said here in a private conversation half a decade ago. He's apologised for. I don't think we need to spend too much time on that, given he's made that apology.
Well, apart from the fact that what we do know for sure is that he is the Conservative Party's biggest donor. £10 million he has given to the Conservative Party. And a lot of people, even within your own party, are saying this morning that doesn't sit right, that you should give the money back. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree with that. If Mr Hester was a racist, if he refused to apologise for what he said, that would be different. He's apologised. I don't believe he's racist. I think in terms of the context of things we've got going on now, and I'm here to talk about the post office and trying to exonerate postmasters and compensate them, you know, there are, I think, bigger issues at play here that we need to focus on in terms of probably greater priorities for the most of the people watching this programme.
I think a lot of people watching this programme have been deeply shocked by this story over the last, 36 hours now. And for them, it is a big issue because it tells them a lot about the government and what the government thinks and how it operates and about community cohesion. And they've been really disturbed by this and they would like you to give the money back. I mean, if Mr Hester today said, right, I'd like to give you another £10 million, would you take it?
Well, on the basis that we don't believe Miss Hester is a racist, yes. But I've got to say, all these people I spoke to yesterday, I spoke to members of the public and postmasters and many other people, nobody mentioned this story to me in terms of the context of what we're trying to do, which is overturn convictions and pay people compensation. That's what I'm really focused on, and I think quite rightly so.
So let's just be absolutely clear. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said that this man's alleged comments were racist and wrong. And you say if this same man wanted to give another £10 million today to the Conservative Party, you'd take the money?
Yes, that's how I understand the situation, yes.
Thank you very much indeed, Kevin Hollingray. We'll get more reaction to that as the programme goes on.
That's right, John, because new legislation to automatically quash convictions relating to the Post Office IT scandal is being introduced by the government. The compensation scheme will also be extended to help branch managers who were not convicted of crimes but who lost money due to flaws in the Horizon system. Our correspondent Coletta Smith reports.
It's been nearly 3 years since the first 39 sub-postmasters won the legal victory at the Court of Appeal to overturn their convictions. But despite the legal precedent, it's been a painfully slow process for others to follow suit and have their criminal records cleared. Rather than opening the floodgates, there's only been a quiet drip of people being exonerated. The Post Office Minister told BBC Breakfast in January that things were going to change.
When the first convictions were overturned in 2021, we thought there would be a huge wave of people coming forward to overturn those convictions. We probably hadn't anticipated some of the nervousness around people might have about reopening their case, about going back through a legal process, about interacting with the Post Office again. So that's why we've been looking at different options in terms of overturning these convictions more rapidly and indeed compensating people more rapidly.
Janet Skinner was one of those who won that High Court battle, but she's been less than impressed with what's happened since then.
Is the government going to take back control over the Post Office? Currently, the Post Office, they are orchestrating convictions, who has a conviction overturned, they're in control of the compensation. They are now classified as the criminals, so why aren't they having the power to control everything?
Today, that question has begun to be answered. The law being introduced means that hundreds of people still living with wrongful convictions for theft, fraud and false accounting will now be automatically cleared. If they come forward, there'll be no court process needed and they'll get access to immediate interim compensation. Those not convicted but who lost money because of the Horizon scandal can now receive a sum of £75,000. And anyone who's already settled for less than that can have their payments topped up to this level. A gradual unpicking of years of injustice. Coletta Smith, BBC News.